All right, welcome back, everyone. Well, first of all, the story we talked about yesterday, Trump was going to, well, was talking about appointing a special master to, well, lead their lawsuit against the Department of Justice. They have moved forward on this. I'll be giving an update on this. I also want to go in depth into the actual declassification orders that Trump made because, funny enough, this is what's being kind of written off right now. They're trying to claim for some reason that Trump did not classify these documents when he did. In fact, I'll show you the documents on it. We're going to be going over this today. I'll show you the actual memorandum Trump made declassifying all these documents. I will show it to you. We'll go over it. And we'll talk about as well one interesting update, which is it seems that Biden himself, or at least top people in the White House, may have been involved, according to some information coming out now, may have actually been involved in this raid, meaning this thing just got even bigger. This is no longer even just Merrick Garland. It looked like he was going to be the fall guy. This goes straight to the White House. Also, we're going to have a special guest today. That's Sheriff Mack. He's been the one leading these constitutional sheriffs. And he actually has his own story about how the FBI raided him when he was a candidate, and how that raid ruined his political campaign, and how the FBI never did anything after that raid, leading him to believe the raid was solely meant to interfere with an election. It's going to be an interesting discussion today, folks. And that said, always wonderful being here with you all. Good morning, everyone. I keep the chats open, so I do read them while I'm talking. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure. Those of you curious today as well, the tea is pu'er. It's like a fermented black tea. It's interesting. It's nice. If you get good stuff, it's nice. All right, folks. That's it. Let's jump into the first story. Briefly as well, those of you on YouTube, on Rumble, we will jump over exclusively to Epic TV after about 25-ish minutes. EPOCHTV.com, and check out the link in the description below. You can get a free trial, so come join us. We do the live Q&A there. It's always a great discussion. Again, we do about 25 minutes on other platforms, hour and a half on Epic TV. So it's a lot of stuff to cover. All right, folks, let's jump into the first story. I want to go over this briefly before I go into these documents because there was a big update that Trump has filed a motion seeking to prevent the Department of Justice to access these records they took from Mar-a-Lago until he can appoint a special master. And really, this lends some credence to what we talked about yesterday, which those of you who remember, I did almost a full episode on it because there was a lot to go over. But basically, it looks like what the FBI did was stole the documents related to Trump's his lawsuit, which is again related to RICO charges. His RICO lawsuit against the U.S. government, including, talking about Hillary Clinton and the whole Trump-Russia incident. It looks like those are the documents they took. And by taking them, they have placed them, pretty much in their own archives under, an ongoing investigation, meaning they can keep them there indefinitely and make sure those documents are not used in Trump's RICO case against them. This looks very, very much and increasingly more so like an attempt by the federal government, the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, and the FBI to cover up a RICO case, to eliminate evidence from a RICO case. And, of course, Trump being the focus of this, we'll see how it goes. On that note now, let me show you this. Epic Times has it. Former President Donald Trump on August 22nd filed a motion asking a federal judge to bar the Justice Department from reviewing documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago residence until a third-party watchdog can be appointed. Remember, one of the big concerns Trump had was one that the FBI would plant false evidence. And one of the current concerns is that they will alter or tamper with evidence, because some of those documents were under attorney-client privilege, again, related to Trump's RICO case against the government. It says in the first court motion from Trump's legal team since the August 8th raid on his residence, the attorneys sought the appointment of a special master, a more detailed list of inventory taken, and a return of any item seized that was not within the scope of the search warrant, according to a filing on August 22nd. What is a special master? It's typically like a retired prosecutor or retired judge or something like that. It's someone who makes sure that basically they're not When you have a case against the FBI or a case against the Department of Justice, it's very hard to have somebody within the system who can represent the case in any kind of any kind of way that does not have a conflict of interest. You can't ask somebody to basically investigate their own employers or their own, the branch that they're under. You can't expect the FBI to investigate itself. You can't expect the Department of Justice to investigate itself and do so in a way that's really, again, free from special interest. So in cases like that, such as this one, you can request a special master to be appointed to the case to oversee it. And that's what Trump is requesting in his lawsuit now, which is in addition to the RICO case. His lawsuit now against the federal government, which they just started unfolding yesterday. We're likely to see more on it soon, which is going to be, at least what we know currently, what they're suggesting, it's going to be accusing the government of violating his Fourth Amendment rights. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution protects you from illegal searches and seizures. The government cannot just do fishing expeditions. They have to state specifically what they're looking for and have justifiable cause to carry out that search, which is why of course, if you're ever asked to be searched, you can always state, is there justifiable cause for this? And if there is, they'll search you. If there isn't, they'll back off. So this is important to know because it's one of your basic fundamental rights and the right that Trump believes was violated in this Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, a bit more on this. The raid is bringing Trump's 2020 and 2021 orders to declassify these documents, I think, into focus. And I did a lot of research for y'all because I kind of wanted to clear the air on this story. Everybody's wondering, did Trump declassify these documents? Trump claims he declassified these documents. The legacy media claims he did not declassify these documents. The Biden administration seems it has the right to even call for a raid on Trump's home on this. And on that note, too, on tomorrow's episode, I'll be going over that part because there's just too much to unpack in just a single episode. So tomorrow, I'll be talking about what Biden did and what looks like his direct involvement with this. But first, I want to lay some new foundations for you all, because a lot of people are wondering, well, did Trump actually declassify these documents? How did that go down? Did he miss something? Was something wrong with it? There were actually two separate cases where he declassified documents, and this is what's important to know. One was in 2020, the other was in 2022. The 2020 declassification was done through Twitter, and that was the one when people were claiming that Trump did not properly declassify things and did not follow protocol and that there were issues with it. That's the one they're typically talking about, because that one was basically thrown out, and I'll explain to you how that went down, because it wasn't Trump who threw it out. It was other people around him who tried blocking it. But in 2021, just before Biden's inauguration, Trump made an official declassification order through a memorandum, and that's the one they're just trying to sweep under the rug. They're trying to pretend this thing never happened. And so I'm going to show you how this all went down and give you the evidence for it so that, you can, of course, will understand it. But two, if you want to help get the word out and debate on the internet or something like that, you'll have the resources to do so. Let's go over this. Let me show you this first. This is Yahoo News. And they're saying Trump says he declassified a Mar-a-Lago documents. Experts say it's unclear whether that will hold up. And I want to show you this to kind of lay out how this story is being claimed right now by a lot of the corporate media. It says former President Donald Trump and his allies say that any sensitive White House documents he brought with him to his Mar-a-Lago estate had been declassified. But some legal and presidential record experts are skeptical of that claim, and they say that Trump could be in criminal jeopardy regardless. While the Justice Department has a long history of prosecuting cases involving the mishandling of classified documents, no such case has ever been brought against a former president, because frankly, the president has declassification authority, pretty broad authority on that. But it continues, right? The one government official who can declassify information at will, which, funny enough, they acknowledge being the president, declassify documents at will. Now, Rick Grenell, who is Trump's acting director of national intelligence and who handled highly classified information, said, quote, There is no approval process for the President of the United States to declassify intelligence. There is this phony idea that he must provide notification for declassification, but that's just silly. Who is he supposed to notify? I think it's the height of swampism to think the president should seek bureaucrats' approval, and Trump himself said in his Truth Social platform on Friday, it was all declassified. Now, I won't go into all the things. Basically, what they argue is that Trump didn't go through the proper process of declassifying these documents. They're claiming that basically, if you wanted to classify documents, there's different debates around this, but the most common way that it's believed a president should do it, although technically in terms of the Constitution, they could just say it and it's declassified, they could just speak it. Technically, they say there has to be a witness present, and that witness needs to have some kind of no security clearance or some kind of arrangement like that. They claim all kinds of different ways with this. Some take it even further, saying you have to go through a bureaucratic process where you get, for example, the Attorney General to sign off on it to do any proper redactions and so on. Now, constitutionally, that's not really true. Constitutionally, the president can just do it at will, essentially. But aside from that point, the big question is, what did Trump do? Did Trump make an announcement of declassification? Did he go through the official process of declassification? Did he even defer this to other people? The answer to those is yes on all fronts, because there were two separate ones and they followed different procedures. But again, they're trying to sweep this under the rug right now. Let me show you. Now, remember when this started. It was in 2020, and Trump ordered on Twitter the first time this declassification, but it was blocked by a judge. Now, before we go into that, folks, we do have a sponsor today, just briefly. Our sponsor today is Secure. Over 155 million Americans are affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the past year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online activity or their data. But now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secure. They give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland, which has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Secure does not mine your data, does not upload your phone number, does not upload your contacts. It functions by adding people you know, then adding their secure numbers. You can still invite people who aren't on the platform. Secure protects you from hackers getting onto your phone. You have full privacy while you're on the app. Now it's $5 for the messenger, $7 for the email, or $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or you can use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. Big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. Now, back to this. I mentioned that in 2020, Trump did declassify these documents, at least he said so on Twitter. There was debate over whether him posting something on Twitter could be taken as an official announcement. Of course, Trump was using Twitter, as many of us may imagine, is almost like his presidential platform. He was using it to speak to the masses, to bypass the media and speak directly to the American people. That was how Trump used Twitter, and it was how people, he himself said that he used it, that he couldn't go through the media, basically because the media would alter what he said, so he used Twitter as his mouthpiece. Now, a judge actually blocked that. It was a Bush-appointed judge who claimed that Trump's orders to declassify these documents was not official. And let me show you how that went down. This is back in 2020. This is the Washington Post, and they said, Judge accepts White House statement as rescinding Trump tweet calling for full declassification of Russia probe. Now, this is a bit of a play on words because the headline would suggest that the White House, Trump, maybe rescinded his order to declassify. In reality, that was not the case. Trump did not rescind that. It was someone in the White House who rescinded it and claimed that it was an official, taking back of Trump's order. Someone in the White House overrode Trump, and let me tell you who that was. It says this: a federal judge on Wednesday, and again, this is 2020, 2 years ago, accepted a White House statement. as rescinding President Trump's tweets that called for the total declassification of all documents in the government's investigation of Russia's intervention in the 2016 election. But U.S. District Judge Reggie B. Walton in D.C., a Bush-appointed judge, chided the president for his carelessness, saying the commander-in-chief's words caused confusion on a matter of national security. National security is in the fake Trump-Russia campaign that was financed by the DNC and by the Clinton campaign, not by Russia in any way, other than the fact that, again, Steele collected information for that fake dossier from 2 unverified Russian sources, ironically. Now, it says further in, Walton ruled in open records lawsuits brought by news organizations and a watchdog group seeking fuller release of material related to special counsel Robert Mueller. That was, again, the special counsel appointed by the Democrats to investigate Trump. The group sought an emergency review of material withheld by the government after Trump tweeted on October 6th, and this was Trump's official tweet, the one that he ordered this declassification, and he said, quote, I have fully authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to the single greatest political crime in American history, the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, no redactions. So, that was Trump's order. It was done publicly. Trump ordered the declassification of all of the documents relating to the investigation into the whole Trump-Russia thing. Trump wanted these public, and he ordered them to be released not only publicly, but without redactions. That was a presidential order, one that by the Constitution should have been held, and one that by the Constitution should have allowed all of us to read those documents for ourselves. What happened? It says here, Justice Department attorneys last week, the Justice Department blocked it, argued to the judge that the White House counsel's office noted the department that despite Trump's statement, quote, there is no order requiring wholesale declassification or disclosure of documents at issue. In other words, the Justice Department overrode the president in his declassification authority. The same Justice Department that's now a subject of investigation, the same Justice Department that seized these documents as Trump was trying to declassify them still based on a second order, and I'll explain it a bit. It says, Walton, a 2001 appointee of George W. Bush, that's the judge who blocked this, and former presiding judge over the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISA, which is the one that was allowing spying on Americans, rejected that explanation, directing the department to produce a declaration from a person who had conferred directly with the president. This is Walton saying this. He says, I think the American public has a right to rely on what the president says his intention is. It seems to me when a president makes a clear, unambiguous statement of what that intention is, that I can't rely on the White House's counsel office saying, well, that was not his intent, he said. In a court filing Tuesday, and this is what happened, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows declared that Trump did not mean what his tweet said. And this was the White House statement that was used by the court to claim that Trump's order to declassify was not valid. It was Mark Meadows, not Trump, but Mark Meadows, who made that claim that was accepted by the court and blocked that from being released. The judge then accepted that. Now, Mark Meadows said, the president indicated to me that his statements on Twitter were not self-executing declassification orders and do not require the declassification or release of any particular documents. That's Mark Meadows. The same Mark Meadows who was later accused of backstabbing Trump, I should note. And the same Mark Meadows whose claims I just read to you were overridden by Trump just several months later in 2021. And this is Trump Jr. after this, and Trump Jr. suggesting that that President Trump's orders were exactly what he meant in his tweet, not what Mark Meadows claimed that Trump meant. Trump Jr. said, declassify everything, and that was in 2020 as well. Let me show you this. This is FAS. It says, on November 8th, Donald Trump Jr., the president's oldest son, tweeted, declassify everything, adding, we can't let the bad actors get away with it. This was not an actual policy proposal, was not seriously intended for classification officials or even for Trump's own father, who is as president is the ultimate one responsible for declassification policy. It's funny how they keep acknowledging that Trump was the ultimate authority on declassification when Mark Meadows chose to override him, and the court accepted Mark Meadows' statement as being a White House order. How is it that Mark Meadows' statement was taken as an order from the White House, overriding the declassification authority from the president himself, who even Yahoo News, as I just showed you, is acknowledging has broad declassification authority, almost total authority with declassification? How is it that the Justice Department can override the President of the United States on that? That's what this story is. And it's funny that not only did they override the president on this, but they're now using the fact that they overrode the president on that to try to criminalize the president's actions. They're trying to claim that they have such a right that is not written anywhere, that is not in the Constitution, that is not any kind of law that's ever been practiced before, that they have such a right that they can override the declassification authority of the President of the United States using a claim, not from the President, but a claim from someone in the White House, Mark Meadows, to a judge, a Bush-appointed judge, that Trump's statements were not what he meant. When Trump stated very clearly that he was ordering the declassification of all of those documents without any kind of redactions. That was the order of the President of the United States, and the documents in question are the ones, based on everything we're seeing now, it appears, that the FBI stole from Trump's residence, that would have actually criminalized maybe the Department of Justice and the FBI in their whole Trump-Russia investigation, and again, violating the law while claiming he violated the law. That's what's happening. They are committing crimes while accusing the president of committing crimes, is what it appears at least. Further on this, in 2020, it says this, because they're talking about Trump has the ultimate person responsible for classification policy. They're acknowledging this in 2020. And they said, rather, it was directed at Trump Jr.'s 6.4, talking about Trump Jr. followers on Twitter. And they're claiming that, they're going after Trump Jr. for some reason, claiming that Trump Jr.'s claims to declassify was not official, ignoring the fact that Trump had actually made that official statement, and that was the main issue that Don Jr. was agreeing with. Now, they say the current executive order on classification policy directs that in no case shall information be classified in order to conceal violations of law, which is one of the big points Trump was using as well in his attempts to declassify these documents. That Robert Mueller, he believed, it seemed, had found criminalizing information about the way the Clinton campaign and the department and the Democrat Party had falsified evidence, disseminated that falsified evidence throughout the government, throughout the media, throughout the country, and then use that to undermine the authority of a sitting president and then try to remove him from office, what could constitute an attempted coup against the President of the United States. An attempt to remove a sitting president from office, which was the role that Robert Mueller played as special counsel. Remember that? Remember it's Mueller time? They kept saying that. Well, Trump was arguing that basically keeping those documents classified was a violation of basic law, the executive order on classification policy that was still enacted, that again says, in no case shall information be classified, and it continues, in order to conceal violations of law. And Trump, it seems, believed that the government is trying to prevent the documents that would expose violations of law by keeping those documents away from the public eye. The same documents, based on every point of evidence we have right now, that the FBI stole from Mar-a-Lago. Now, the picture is becoming more clear on this. Trump's orders were blocked after he left the White House as well. They were blocked by this judge. Mark Meadows was the one who claimed that Trump didn't mean what he said. Meanwhile, of course, this thing was still trying to go through. Trump was still trying to push it. and Trump declassified the documents allegedly with him. Then the FBI blocked it afterwards. Now, the Washington Examiner is now reporting this. Let me show you. They're saying final Trump declassification request to DOJ blocked after he left the White House. And they're saying former President Donald Trump's final declassification request, because he tried it multiple times, was blocked by the Justice Department after he left the White House. New documents reveal, new records reveal. Meaning, Trump, and I'll show you this in a minute. I'm trying to unravel all this in a way that makes sense. Trump, I showed you the one in 2020 where he tried declassifying these documents. That was overridden by Mark Meadows, then by this judge. Trump tried again to declassify these documents, again while he was still president. But after he left office, that order was overridden, again, that he made officially as president, who has broad declassification authority, meaning Trump legally declassified those documents while he was president of the United States and had the authority to do so. And that was overridden after he left office. Now, the question is, can they even legally do that, which is really, really questionable. Basically because the government very, very likely violated the law while preventing Trump from releasing these documents, and then tried changing the law to remove his authority to do so, and then tried criminalizing him, as we're seeing now, for keeping those documents that he officially declassified when he had the full authority to do so. Now, it says this. The memo, this is just coming out. The memo by Trump's Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, that was delivered on the morning of January 20, 2020, noted the Justice Department must release the binder of declassified documents about the flawed Trump-Russia investigation following a privacy review, suggesting that Mark Meadows maybe wasn't totally honest with what he told the judge at the time. If the memo that Mark Meadows had, that he allegedly even delivered, did in fact talk about the declassified documents and so on, that they wanted them released, why did Mark Meadows misrepresent that by claiming that Trump did not mean that? It says the Justice Department, under Attorney General Merrick Garland, the one who signed off on this raid just recently, does not appear to have released the records despite the declassification order from Trump and the last-minute memo from Meadows. Republicans have also been pushing Garland to make the records public since early 2021 to no avail. The January 20th, 2021 memo was made public by Just the News after a visit to Trump's collection at the National Archives. Meadows told the Department of Justice the Office of Legal Counsel had said the Privacy Act does not apply to the White House, but that, quote, we do not intend to disclose material that would violate the standards of the Privacy Act. This is Mark Meadows again, apparently trying to block the release of these documents, is what it seems. Twice at this point. The Trump Chief of Staff, nevertheless, asked the Department of Justice to review the records for anything that might run afoul of the spirit of the privacy law. Let me show you the actual Trump document. And to jump over to Epic TV on this. So, folks, I'm going to show you the actual Trump document from January 2021. This is the actual document Trump had, and it in no way suggests that Mark Meadows had the right to request a review for this. There's no clear reason why Mark Meadows would have intervened in Trump's process of declassifying these documents, because Trump states clearly and directly that he ordered the declassification of all these documents without redaction, that it would not have to go through any authority in order to be released publicly. Why did they intervene in that process? Why did they prevent that from happening? And why are they now trying to incriminate Trump for taking the documents he legally declassified that they have very likely illegally kept out from the public eye? This is looking more and more like the federal government under the Biden administration, maybe Mark Meadows, Merrick Garland very likely as well, violating the law possibly violating the law, and then trying to incriminate Trump for following the law that they violated. This is pretty serious. I'm going to show you this in a sec. First, though, folks, we're going to jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Before we jump, though, again, I mentioned we have a couple whistleblowers, several. Whistleblowers who stepped forward from the U.S. military, talking about how there's a cover-up of vaccine injuries in the military, and also how there's a cover-up as well, trying to prevent, for some reason, working treatments, and also people trying to legitimately give, what they call informed consent to troops. There's some very strange things happening in the military. It does appear there's a cover-up, and we have several whistleblowers. Let me show you a trailer of one of those recent interviews we just did.
Every answer now is mRNA vaccine. Marburg disease, which is the next thing that they're talking about now, there's a vaccine that was created in 2016 for that. And that patent was made in 2016. Well, Marburg itself only has 400, maybe 600 reported cases since 1967. Why are we spending so much money on a vaccine for monkeypox or for Marburg when we don't really see a lot of cases like that? It's not easily transmissible. It's a concern for me as a guy who studies biowarfare. The national security of this nation is standing in the balance, and we are at the precipice right now where if you don't consider measure twice and cut once, the data, the information that you get, and the source that you get it from, if you do not consider that, you will fall prey to mass formation psychosis, cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, again, folks, we have a few whistleblowers who stepped forward from the U.S. military, talking about a cover-up, again, of COVID, of the vaccine injuries, and also talking about actions that are very suspicious of the military, preventing working treatments, and also possibly violating some laws as well. Be sure to watch those interviews, help spread them, because these are whistleblowers who are putting a lot on the line to make this public. All right, folks, that said, let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV. Then I'm going to go over this Trump document, his actual order, the official order. I'm going to show